Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Kritika, OBG Senior Resident. My topic today is vulval carcinoma. We will discuss about the incidence, the presentation, staging and treatment of vulval carcinoma. And along with this topic, I will also give you a short discussion about your first internal paper. I had this golden opportunity of correcting some of your internal papers and basically I'll just give you a few points as to where you went wrong and how you can do it better the next time. Okay, so starting off, coming to the introduction, vulval carcinoma is not very common. It corresponds to only 3 to 5% of the malignancies of the female genital tract. So it starts off with a pre-invasive lesion, invasive lesion, and then a metastatic tumor. So in pre-invasive lesions, this is basically intraepithelial lesion which is limited only to the epithelium of the vulval skin. It can be classified as VIN 1, 2 and 3. 1 is mild cellular abnormality will be there which is limited to the basal layer. VIN 2 is 1/3 to 2/3 of the epithelium is involved, and VIN 3 is the entire thickness of the epithelium is involved, but the basal layer or the basement membrane is not being eroded. That will become invasive. So coming to the etiology, the main etiology is the incidence is usually seen in elderly women, and chronic vulval irritation will be there. Infections like HIV and HPV are said to be predisposing, and poor hygiene, smoking or poor nutrition are predisposing factors, and almost 50% of the cases they generally progress to neoplasia if not diagnosed early. And obesity, diabetes, chronic pruritus, dermatitis, they are also some of the predisposing factors. So the clinical features of a intraepithelial neoplasia, this is of pre-invasive lesions. Okay, so clinical features will be pruritus will be there generally, and it is usually misdiagnosed and treated as a fungal infection. They can be asymptomatic also at most of the time. Gradually soreness and dysuria will develop, and pre-existing leukoplakia, condylomas or dystrophies can also be there, which has increased in short time. And pruritus can also lead to secondary infection, which the patient can present with a secondary infection. So investigations, mainly a biopsy is the clinching diagnosis. Exfoliative cytology or a colposcopy can be done, but it is not very useful. 5% acetic acid application can be done on the abnormal areas, and it will give you pigmentation so that you can biopsy from that particular area. So the management is mainly to relieve the symptoms of pruritus and soreness, to prevent development of invasive cancer, and to avoid mutilating surgery and sexual dysfunction in young women. So the treatment depends on the age, the sexual activity of the woman, extent of the VIN and its grading. So treatment mainly is small lesions, local excision with 2 centimeters of the normal surrounding tissue should be done. VIN 1 and 2 can be observed every 6 months for regression spontaneously. No need to do any surgical treatment. Conservative management has about 95% success in cases of pre-invasive lesions. Only their symptoms have to be relieved. Recurrent lesions or persistent lesions will need a vulvectomy with split thickness graft. Otherwise, you can do a laser excision, which is using carbon dioxide laser, or cryosurgery up to the depth of 2 centimeters. Local application of fluorouracil 5% cream for 6 to 8 weeks along with a corticosteroid cream, and prophylactic like HPV vaccine can be given. Photodynamic therapy 5-aminolevulinic acid application causes nascent oxygen release, and therefore that induces cell damage or death. In elderly women, a simple vulvectomy can be done. The recurrence rate of a pre-invasive lesion is around 20 to 30%, and regular follow-up at 6 monthly interval is mandatory. 5 to 10% progress to invasive cancer in 8 to 10 years. So coming to invasive carcinoma of the vulva, basically neoplastic changes from pre-invasive, they have become invasive now. So they have eroded the basement membrane. Common in elderly women, 6th to 7th decade, and can be associated with CA cervix in 20 to 25% of the cases. Nulliparous and women of low parity are more predisposed to vulval cancer. So coming to the types of vulval carcinoma, this is based on the naked eye appearance. So it can be either basaloid type or warty type. and it can be keratinizing type. So basaloid and warty, they are more in younger women less than 50 years of age. HPV infection is said to be the most important etiology, and it will usually have a predisposing intraepithelial neoplasia. They can be causes like smoking, and causes are also similar to that of cancer cervix. And lower genital tract infections will be common in these people. They will also have some degree of immunosuppression. So as you can see in the first pictures, the histopathological picture and the naked eye appearance of a warty or a basaloid lesion. Coming to the keratinizing type, they are usually unifocal. They do not have any warty appearance. It will be as though a lesion from the skin, as though it is arising from the skin. So it will be unifocal in older patients around 70 years. No HPV infection will be there, and predisposing lichen sclerosis or any other skin disease can be there. Squamous hyperplasia is seen, and these people in keratinizing, they will have a typical itch scratch cycle. That is, because of this continuous scratching, there will be sclerosis and hyperplasia. It will lead to atypical changes in the epithelium that is constantly being repaired or replaced. Because of the scratch, there will be hyperplasia of the lesion that can lead to malignancy because of the atypical changes. Okay, so coming to the types based on histopathological findings, they can be squamous, melanoma, basal cell carcinoma, Bartholin gland carcinoma, metastatic varicose sarcoma. Out of all this, squamous cell carcinoma is the most common, 92%, and in them, atypical keratinization is the hallmark. So coming to the clinical features of a invasive malignancy, they are usually postmenopausal women. 25 to 30% have primary from the cervix spreading to the vulva, and pruritus is a common feature. There can be a lump or mass in the vulva because of which they can present. Bleeding if it is ulcerative. There can be discharge, foul smelling discharge can be there. There can be pain and dysuria, and occasionally lymph node enlargement in the groin can be there. So they may present first with the lymph node enlargement. So on examination, ideally every gynecologic patient, we have to inspect the vulva thoroughly. The external examination is very, very important. So in vulval cancer, there can be lesions which may be raised, fleshy, ulcerated or warty in appearance. They can be painless and pigmented, red or white. 60 to 70% they arise from the labia majora and minora, 15% from the clitoris, 10% from the perineum, and 10% are very large, and you cannot even know the source of the, you can't know the origin of the malignancy. So what all to examine? First and foremost, assess the extent of the lesion. When you see a mass, when you see a lesion in the vulva, assess the extent of it. Always check the groin lymph nodes, and a complete pelvic examination has to be done. That is a per speculum, per vaginal examination, and a per rectal examination. Cervix, pap smear of the cervix has to be taken because as we have seen earlier, around 25 to 30% of them come from the cervix mainly. So definitely a pap smear is mandatory, and colposcopy of the cervix and the vagina is also compulsory. So coming to the diagnosis, there are two things. One is a wedge biopsy. Wedge biopsy is the picture that you can see on the left. Basically, the part of the lesion with the normal tissue is taken. Okay, so the normal tissue is very important because that will give you the differentiating factor between the malignant cells and the normal cells of the vulva. If the lesion is too small, that is less than 1 centimeter, then do a complete excisional biopsy, the picture on the right. Okay, so next thing is coming to the staging. So initially, staging in carcinoma vulva was clinical staging based on the lymph node enlargement, based on the lesion that we see, the size of the lesion. So it was a clinical staging. But as diagnostic therapeutic as the diagnostic modalities have increased, what has happened is there is high incidence of micrometastasis was noted, and micro lesions in the lymph nodes which were not evident clinically. Therefore, the staging has been changed to surgical staging. So this is a FIGO staging of carcinoma vulva. You will have to know this. If a question comes based on carcinoma vulva, this has to be written. So either you mug it up or you try and understand it or remember it in any which way you want, but this has to be presented in the paper if it is asked. So stage 1 is basically tumor confined to the vulva. 1A is lesion less than 2 cm with no nodal metastasis. 1B is lesions more than 2 cm with stromal invasion with again no metastasis, no lymph node metastasis. Stage 2 is tumor of any size with extension to the adjacent perineal structures, either upper urethra, lower vagina, anus, with negative nodes. Stage 2 also nodes are negative. In stage 3, it is tumor of any size with or without extension to the adjacent structures with positive inguinofemoral nodes. Okay, so 3A, 3B and 3C are based on the size of the nodes and the number of the nodes. Okay, you classify. Stage 4 is tumor which invades the other regional structures, that is 2/3 upper urethra, 2/3 upper vagina or distant structures. 4A is where it is involving the urethra and the vagina, bladder mucosa, rectal mucosa, or fixed to the pelvic bone. Stage 4B is any distant metastasis including pelvic lymph nodes. So coming to the route of spread, it can be either direct spread to the vagina, urethra, cervix, bladder, anus or rectum. It can be a lymph nodal spread, which is very important because vulva has some peculiar lymphatic channels. So lymph node involvement is very, very crucial. So it can be regional lymph nodes or femoral nodes can be involved, and through hematogenous it can spread to the lung, liver and bone. Okay, so a note on the vulval lymphatics. Basically, vulval lymphatics comprise of the where all does it spread? It goes into the external iliac, internal iliac, superficial inguinal glands between the campus fascia and the fascia lata, and the deep inguinal glands, that is the femoral nodes along the femoral vessels, and the gland of Clockway. So the thing with lymphatics of the vulva is, see, these are basically dense lymphatic plexus in the dermis of the vulva which intercommunicate with those of the subcutaneous tissue. The lymphatics of each side freely communicate with each other. The lymphatics hardly cross beyond the labiocrural fold. The vulval lymphatics also anastomose with the lymphatics of the lower third of the vagina and drain into the external iliac nodes. Lymphatics from the deep tissue of the vulva, they accompany the internal pudendal vessels to the internal iliac nodes. So they also drain into the external iliac nodes, internal iliac nodes. Superficial inguinal lymph nodes are the primary lymph nodes that act as the sentinel nodes of the vulva. Deep inguinal lymph nodes are secondarily involved. And it is unusual to find positive pelvic glands without any metastatic disease in the inguinal nodes. So the inguinal nodes form your sentinel nodes. Without your inguinal nodes being positive, no other gland will usually be positive or will have any spread of the disease. The gland of Clockway or the Rosenmuller, which is the uppermost deep femoral node, is absent in about 50% of the cases. So the peculiarities are basically lymphatics on either side, they have a rich network of anastomosis along the midline. Lymphatics of the clitoris, labia minora and the perineum, ideally the midline, they are bilateral. Presence of contralateral lymph node involvement without ipsilateral node involvement, it is extremely rare, that is less than 0.4%. And lymph nodes, they form the single most important prognostic factor. If lymph nodes are negative, there is 90% survival for 5 years. If lymph nodes are positive, then 5-year 50% 5-year survival. So coming to the treatment of stage 1, vulval lymphatics is very, very important. You all have to know certain points because they are peculiar. They are not like any other lymphatic spread in the body. It is not like any other malignancy that, okay, because of the lymphatics it spreads to these glands. No, they are peculiar in their own way. So these are certain points which you have to remember about the vulval carcinoma. This lymphatic spread of vulva itself is a 5-mark question in it can be a 5-mark question. Okay, so treatment, coming to stage 1, treatment will be depending on the stages. So stage 1 or early vulval carcinoma, a radical vulvectomy or a radical local excision. So what does the terminology radical mean? So when we say, see, there are two things. One is conservative. Conservative is where you're trying to retain as much as possible. Exact opposite is radical. In radical, you're just removing everything. You're removing the lesion, and along with the lesion, what other things can get affected due to that, you're removing everything surrounding that lesion. Okay, so radical means that means you're removing the affected disease part, and around that, whatever can be affected, you're removing that also. So it is exactly the opposite of conservative. So in stage 1, you have to do a radical vulvectomy or a radical local excision. Treatment again should be age specific. In old women, vulvectomy is the treatment of choice. In younger women, conserve as much as possible because sexual function is important, and also depends on the location of the lesion. Like if it is lateral, it is easier to excise, so surgery is the mainstay of treatment. If it is in the midline, it is challenging because of there are various other organs also, like clitoris, urethra, anus. So a combination has to be used. That is, first you give radiotherapy. So what does radiotherapy do? Radiotherapy will shrink the lesion. It will make it small. After that you go for a surgery. So excision becomes that much easier. Okay. So next, coming to stage 2 and 3. In stage 2 and 3, radical vulvectomy with bilateral inguinofemoral lymphadenectomy has to be done. If other organs are involved like urethra, vagina or anus, then partial resection has to be done. Partial resection of the lesion, and then you can subject the patient to radiotherapy. Any large defect, leave it to granulate for 6 to 8 weeks, followed by skin flaps to close. Tensor fascia lata can also be used, most applicable in terms of graft. Okay. So in lymph node dissection, if at all the ipsilateral nodes are negative, no need to remove any nodes. Okay, but it is important to remember that the chances of contralateral nodes getting affected is directly proportional to the ipsilateral node affection. That means if it is a large tumor, if even one lymph node is one ipsilateral node is positive, then the chances of spread to the contralateral nodes will be much higher. Therefore, in such cases, any large bulky tumor, especially in the midline, requires removal of both ipsilateral and contralateral nodes. So first, before even starting, we have to do a lymphatic mapping. It is essential with blue dye or methylene blue to identify the sentinel lymph nodes. If sentinel lymph nodes are negative, no need to do lymph node dissection at all. So when we come to an advanced stage, in advanced stage, pelvic excenteration in addition to radical vulvectomy and lymph node dissection. So what is excenteration? Pelvic excenteration means the blue dotted lines which are represented here, everything will be removed. That is the bladder, the uterus along with the fallopian tubes and the ovaries, along with that the bowel, the anus, cervix, everything will be removed, and this leads to extensive physical and psychological morbidity, after which external beam radiation and concomitant chemotherapy can also be given. It may be of some help, but usually in advanced stage it is usually palliative therapy. There is nothing much that anybody can do. So coming to a post-op management. Post-op management in stage 1 and stage 2 malignancies is basically you can start ambulation of the patient in 24 hours. Start diet in 6 to 12 hours. A regular diet can be started. Frequent dressings and local hygiene is very, very important. Suction drainage can be kept inside for up to 10 days. Catheterization of the bladder for a week for urethral involvement or midline near the urethra. Otherwise not required. Only for 48 hours you can catheterize the patient. And IV antibiotics for 48 to 72 hours. Both aerobic and anaerobic cover has to be given. Then coming to the complications. Early complications and late complications. Early can be simple things like wound infection, necrosis, fever, UTI, DVT or pulmonary embolism can occur. Late complications like chronic lymphedema can occur, cellulitis of the leg, altered body image, sexual dysfunction, due to which depression and general morbidity, psychological stress can be there. In addition to this, there are a few other things. One is known as the Bowen's disease. In Bowen's disease, this is basically an intraepithelial carcinoma of the vulva. It is slow growing, hard, reddish indurated patch, well circumscribed, dry eczematous surface. Pruritus is the main symptom. Like you can see in the image, they are basically darkly pigmented, indurated patches that can be seen. Okay, and in them, histopathology shows typical prickle cells invading the epidermis with presence of giant cells. Simple vulvectomy is the treatment of choice. One more entity which we have to know about is the Paget's disease. Paget's disease you would have heard in breast, in the mammary tissue. Vulva is one of the site of extramammary. Okay, so it is a rare extramammary disease with involvement of the apocrine sweat glands. They come as slightly elevated, sharply demarcated, white indurated lesion found in the postmenopausal woman. Histopathology reveals typical large vacuolated cells. You can see in the second figure, typical vacuolated cells in the epidermis called Paget cells. They have very pale cytoplasm with a vesicular nucleus. Okay, that is the typical feature of a Paget cells. And 20% of the cases may have adenocarcinomas of the Bartholin gland. Treatment is basically by vulvectomy if no underlying cancer is present. Radiotherapy can be helpful. Local or systematic 5-fluorouracil and bleomycin is also tried, and tumor recurrence is around 20%. So along with vulval carcinoma, these two are also entities which you have to know. They can come as 3 marks or 5 marks. Okay, so next is so next, coming to your question paper, the first internal question paper. So basically what I want you to know is, see, I know many of you all will be familiar with these things that I'm going to tell, but this is for those who don't know how to write answers properly. So hope it helps. Okay, so basically let's see the first question. Whenever you're writing an internal paper, always understand the question. Definitions, when they say define, always write keywords. Definitions always have some keywords which are mandatory. You have to mention those. Without that, you cannot expect marks. And don't write your own explanation as a definition. Okay, definition means it has to be from the book. If not from the book, at least those keywords have to be there. And if and the, here and there will be fine, but those keywords are very, very important. And mechanism of labor in occipito anterior position, I think most of you all have written this. Some of you all have they have mistaken it as occipito posterior position. So if you mistake things like that, if you assume things like that, then nobody can help you. No matter how many pages you write, if you have written occipito posterior position, then it will carry no marks. Okay, you will not get any marks, maybe 1 mark for attempting. And coming to how do you monitor the patient in labor, many of you all have written partogram. Partogram is a part of monitoring. It is not the only way of monitoring. Okay, when we ask you for monitoring, we expected you to write monitoring the patient in the first stage, second stage how you monitor, third stage how you monitor, and the fourth stage, that is 1 hour observation, what all will you observe. So if anybody has written that, then they are going to get good marks. Otherwise, don't expect. Okay, then coming to secondary amenorrhea, again the same thing. Define, it has to have, I think that most of you all have written the definition correctly. Causes also many of you all have written. Coming to the management aspect, see, management always has to include the investigations. Many of you all, I can say all of you all, have only written one flow chart. I think that flow chart is in Datta or Shaw's textbook. I don't know from where you all have written it, but that flow chart is not the treatment of secondary amenorrhea. It is just a guideline. Okay, so you have to write investigations, and each and every investigation has to be elaborated. Like if, for example, say thyroid, TSH you're sending, or prolactin you're sending. If it is high, what is the meaning? If it is low, what is the interpretation? And if you're doing an interpretation, how it affects secondary amenorrhea, further how you're going to treat it. Like that, you can't just put a flow chart and expect us to assume that, okay, you know it. Okay, and always follow your clinical features. Whenever you're writing treatment aspect, always follow your clinical features. You will get, it guides your treatment basically. along with secondary amenorrhea, what other features do they have? So that will help you. Maybe PCOD is one common cause, so that can help you in the treatment. So always see your clinical features for guidance. Okay, next, coming to the short essays. Type of pelvis in female, most of you all have written it, and since it's for 5 marks, always there are 4 types of pelvis. Along with that, there are many other types, but okay, that we wouldn't have expected you all to write. The thing is, always include diagrams in your answers. No matter what, every question, put in a diagram, put in a flowchart. It is time saving, and it is also eye catching for the examiner to correct. Okay, and it cannot go wrong. It cannot go wrong. If you have put a diagram or if you have put a flowchart properly, we will understand that you know what you're talking about. Okay, and in types of pelvis, the incidence of each type of pelvis had to be written clearly. Along with that, explain 3 to 4 lines of each type. That would have been enough. Okay, but I think most of you all have written it quite okay. Septic abortion, write the etiology and management of septic abortion. See, again, in this, many of you all have defined septic abortion. There is no need. It was not required at all. What have they asked? Etiology. Not many have written a clear etiology at all. Okay, there is no proper mention of what causes septic abortion. Only one thing is, say, MTPs or illegal abortions. No, that is not the only cause. No, there are so many other causes of septic abortion. So you need to write etiology with explanation of that etiology is important. Along with that, management, again, investigations and treatment. And many of you all have written grade 1, grade 2, grade 3 treatment, anti-gangrene serum, anti-tetanus serum. Nobody gives all that now. Yeah, don't write all those things. See, if you have it is given in Datta, I agree, but now it is not practiced. So even if you're writing from Datta, you should know what is updated, what is not, what is outdated. Okay, don't write things which are not being practiced now. Okay, so next thing, coming to causes of pathological vaginal discharge, I think that most have written, no need to go into that. The next thing is followings of a case of a vesicular mole. One thing, this many of y'all have got it wrong. Followings of a case of vesicular mole, first of all, the question itself is questionable, but the thing is, what is important in a vesicular mole is the follow-up of a vesicular mole. Okay, why are you bothered about the follow-up? Because there is chances of turning into a choriocarcinoma. So what all can occur from a vesicular mole? That is choriocarcinoma, the recurrence, and the treatment aspect of it. So this is what we expected in followings of the vesicular mole. It's basically what all a mole can turn into. Okay, the next thing is, write a note on the chocolate cyst of ovary. So when we say write a note, you have to mention everything about the chocolate cyst, even if it is for 3 marks. As in, see, when we say write a note, you have to start with what is it, the incidence of it, any peculiar clinical feature which clinches the diagnosis, and the treatment aspect, any investigation which is peculiar to it, and treatment aspect. Each thing, but a single line or 2 lines. Okay, that will be enough for a 3 mark questions. No need to write for a page or a 1.5 page, but just a few points under each headache. It has to be there. Then coming to the maternal mortality rate and causes. Maternal mortality rate, nobody has written a proper definition. Nobody has written the current maternal mortality rate in India. Even if I think somebody has written, they have written it wrong. And causes, when we say causes, you should at least say 6 causes, 6 to 7 causes, involving obstetric and non-obstetric causes. Okay, so if you all have written that, then you will get your marks. Next thing, coming to the tubal patency test. Whenever a test is asked, you have to always start with the principle of the test. Along with that, procedure has to be written. Procedure in 1 or 2 lines. Procedure, what you exactly do. Like for example, in this, what substance we use to check the patency of the test of the tubes, and in whom do we do, when do we do it, which part of the menstrual cycle do we do it. Such key points you have to mention. Even if it is for 3 marks, you have to mention. Then along with that, you have to write the indications and contraindications and any other similar tests which are there. Those, if you mention the names, it is more than enough. But when they have just asked tubal patency test as a vague question, they have not mentioned anything specific, like say indications of tubal patency test. So when they have not asked that, then you have to mention everything, but a single line will be enough for a 3 marker. For a 5 marker, if the same question comes, then you have to elaborate each and everything. Okay, saying from the principle to the procedure, everything has to be in detail, preferably with a diagram. And the last thing is diagnosis of tuberculosis of female genital tract. Okay, see, in this, basically, because it is for 3 marks, you have to write 3 or 4 diagnostic tests which clinch the diagnosis of genital TB. Not CBC, not Mantoux test, not chest x-ray, not all those things. This is only pertaining to female genital tract. So what are all the diagnostic procedures like CB-NAT, endometrial biopsy? So these kind of things you have to mention. And the thing is, just for the sake of filling the paper, don't write other diagnostic tests. They make no sense. Okay, so you have to mention, basically you have to be smart about it. Okay, so that is the thing. And a few other things is, so whenever the question says write a note, elaborate on, or briefly explain, you have to explain. You have to at least under specific headings explain 2 or 3 lines of each thing, like say incidents, clinical features, investigations, everything. Highlight the headings properly. Sometimes people, examiners, they just see the headings that okay, she has written presentation, she has written clinical features, she has written investigations, and they'll just give the marks. So highlight your headings properly and make it look, whenever the question is write a note, elaborate on, or briefly explain, okay, when it has these terms, then make sure you have these headings, under that you have written some matter. Whenever the question is something like enumerate or list the causes, list the complications, in such cases no need to explain, just enumerate, just name, like say list 3 of the complications pertaining to vulval carcinoma, or enumerate the causes of maternal mortality rate. So only the causes you name, no need to explain in that. And this enumerate or list questions come only in the 3 markers. Okay, and wherever possible, please draw diagrams, please put in flow charts. I cannot tell you the importance of it. Like, it is very important to put in diagrams. Only it is very scoring. Basically, it doesn't take much time from your side, and also the examiner will not feel bored looking at the paper. It's very scoring. So I would recommend to put in a lot of diagrams and flowcharts. And always remember that the maximum scoring are your 5 markers and 3 markers. So read those questions properly, understand what they are trying to ask, and stick to those questions. Just because you know the definition, don't put in the definition. Just because you know one peculiar treatment which has been given in this, which nobody else might write, don't write it there. It will not make sense. You will not get any marks for it. In fact, you may even lose marks if it is wrong. Okay, so read your questions properly, understand what is being asked, and be smart while answering. Be smart about it. Know what to write, what not to write, what to omit from the answer. You may know a lot of things about the topic, but what are they asking? So be smart about that. Okay, so hope it helps, and thank you for listening. So next time, please do write better answers. Thank you.